Hey everyone, and welcome to another Home Tech. I'm Seth Johnson, and I'm joined as always by Jason Griffin. Jason, how's it going, man?
It's going great, Seth. How are you?
I'm doing well. I was looking through our show notes and seeing what we're going to talk about. I think this is going to be a pretty disappointing episode.
Debbie Downer, I know.
Yeah. This is our I guess our annual disappointment episode. We're going to go negative on this one.
Yeah. Well, I guess it sort of fits. I've been battling a pretty bad chest cold over here. You might hear it in my voice, so I guess it kind of fits with the mood, I suppose.
Yeah, well, if you cough, I'll edit it all out.
You may have some editing to do. Careful what you promise.
Yeah, so you've been pretty sick, sounds like. We've been really cold. We had a tornado come through. Crazy.
Oh my.
Yeah, crazy weather here. But now it's really cold. I don't know what to do.
Cold by whose standards?
It's like 41.
Oh, that's just frigid. That's like people are running around in t-shirts when it's 41 in the winter.
We don't know what to do here. We're all lost.
I'm sure.
The sun is out, but we can't go to the beach.
Yeah. Oh, funny. Well, we've got a lot to cover here. Let's jump in. I think, Seth, you wanted to kind of start out the episode with one of our Twitter shout-outs that we've been trying to do more of. Yeah.
At Savvy Tech Consult said, at Seth P. Johnson, which is my personal, if you want to follow me.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah. How'd that Verilight/door lock project go? And I remembered that we kind of made mention of it a couple episodes back before CES.
Teased that a couple of weeks ago. I've been curious myself.
Well, I didn't want to say anything at the time because it wasn't really working well, and I wasn't sure why. And I always figure, it's me. It's got to be me.
That never happens.
Yeah, right? But well, let's go back to day one when I plugged it in. The setup that I went through with the Vera setup, you basically plug the unit in, you go to their website, and it figures out somehow magically where the Vera is in the world and links it to an account. So you get this like interesting interface that says your controllers, and then has some like crazy serial number, and you click on that. Well, I clicked on that, and it says, oh, you need to upgrade. And so I'm like, okay, let's hit upgrade. And I hit upgrade, and then it goes into this upgrade process, which is just like insane and doesn't really tell you that it's done or ready or anything. And so I'm just like clicking around the website.
Worst.
Yeah, so I'm just like clicking around the website trying to figure out, why this thing isn't working, what's it doing. And eventually I got to the point where I said, maybe I should just back away from the keyboard for like 5 minutes.
Go have a cup of coffee or something.
Yeah. So I did. Backed away. Turned out that's what the problem was. It just had to finish updating. And when it did, it came online. I was able to, after somewhat of a pain of like running between the door and the Vera, like to get the Z-Wave. In Zigbee we call it pairing, but in Z-Wave they call it something else. And you have to like put it in unsupported mode to like unidentify it out of the Z-Wave network or something like that. I had to do that a couple of times, and eventually it just magically started working for a while there. I had like 2 door locks in my project. One wasn't working, and then one was. And eventually it just all kind of worked itself out.
Okay, so at the end of the day, it is working.
At the end of the day, it was working. I could go to the Vera app and press door lock or door unlock, and it would work fine.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, but what I wanted to do was integrate it into my Control 4 system. And that took a little bit of extra effort. I got that all going perfectly fine. There was one little small issue where I kept looking at it going, why does Control 4 tell me it's unlocked when it is locked? But there's a setting in there where you can invert the relay. So it was basically telling me the door was locked when it was unlocked and locked when it was unlocked. Yeah, something like that. So it was really a couple confusing days of me like scratching my head on what I did wrong. But it seems to have been working well. And the Vera piece seems to be heavily security focused. Like the controller has a couple of different modes you can put it in. which I didn't know. I thought this was pretty neat. Like you can tell the system when you're home and kick off a couple of actions based on that. There's an away and a vacation mode and maybe one or two other modes that you can put it in. I haven't played around with those just, simply because I have a single door lock, but it seems like a pretty good solution for what I would call like the power user. Maybe I wouldn't put this in the hands of a novice.
Yeah, I was going to say, it seemed to me like the kind of the moral of the story here is that the smart home still is not for the faint of heart, right? We hear a lot about DIY and Verilight. I think it's talked about a lot in those circles, but it sounds like you really kind of had to dig in, be persistent, and eventually got it working, but
cross fingers.
Yeah. Do like the magic dance. And I think the best thing you said is sometimes you just have to take a step back, walk away, let it do its thing. So glad you got it working.
Yeah, me too. It's been working great. And what's really neat is Vera actually has like a somewhat nice little app that you can use. I know there's a bunch of third parties and apps that you can use if you had more things than maybe a door lock. But I'm able to like unlock and lock the door while I'm out of the house, and all that's done for free. Like with Control 4, I'd have to pay, what is it, $100 a year for their Foresight subscription service.
Yep.
With the Vera, it's free, kind of like it should be, I think. But overall, good product. Just a wonky setup. I don't know how anything is going to. It's how it's done, like it just seems to be the most difficult thing is what we get. And that's how everything is kind of still difficult to set up in some way, form, or fashion. Like it should be a lot easier. You think like pressing a button on a door lock to identify it into a controller hub is something that should be, it sounds easy. It sounds like a 2-step process. And it took like 10 or 20
and
me walking away. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Savvy Tech Consult, for reaching out. We appreciate it. And if you're listening and want to send us a tweet sometime during the week, we are really encouraging our listeners to do that, and would love to get you engaged with the show and whatever thoughts you have, suggestions, questions. We'd love to touch on that. And so I guess that concludes, Seth, our this week in Seth Johnson's home technology segment.
All right. Oh, there's more to come.
I look forward to it. It kind of segues into a story we wanted to talk about here and kind of open up the show. We talked about sort of this week being kind of like a Debbie Downer week and not a lot of great news. And the first story, Seth, is actually one that you had pointed out about a Comcast security flaw that somebody discovered.
Yeah, I noticed this article over at Ars Technica that was pointing to a group of hackers that have said that they found a flaw in Comcast's security system that they're pushing out to their customers. Now, if you don't know, Comcast is one of the larger cable companies here in the States, if not the largest. It's got to be one of them. Mm-hmm. They have a service that like a home automation. It's home automation, but they gear it like as a monitored security service. And they include that portion of the monitored security in your bill. So like I was saying with the Vera piece, I can buy this, $200, $200 Vera piece and bind it with the same door lock that, a Z-Wave door lock. And that is free for me to control. But if I wanted to do the same thing through Comcast, that portion of the remote control would go through their through my cable bill, essentially. It's just like the internet.
Right.
So evidently Comcast has decided to use Zigbee, sorry, not Z-Wave, but Zigbee wireless protocol for their security devices. And if anybody listening kind of knows where this is going, the Zigbee protocol is an open standard, and it runs in a fairly congested range of wireless frequencies. It's the 2.4 gigahertz frequency. It's what Wi-Fi runs on.
Yeah,
it's what your microwave runs on and kills your Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think fairly congested is probably the understatement of the week.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of people who have baby monitors. I remember this happening a lot, especially way back when Wi-Fi was just coming around. They would turn baby monitors on, and since the baby monitors ran at 2.4. Every time those were on, it would kill off the Wi-Fi signal, and you wouldn't have any wireless in the house. It wasn't like a little. You just had none because of the baby monitor.
Right.
So evidently these hackers figured out that they could just jam that 2.4 gigahertz frequency that the Zigbee is in, and just cause interference between the door and window contacts or other security devices that are on the system and the Xfinity hub that sits next to the router, and that would effectively shut down the system. Just wouldn't know that those devices weren't checking in or reporting in, and it would report everything was fine. So you could just walk right into the house. Which
is, the biggest, what you just said to me is the biggest kind of glaring problem with this story is that, using 2.4 gigahertz is one thing, but, having the system set up to where it doesn't sense that those devices have been jammed and report some sort of problem to me seems like a glaring omission.
Yeah. And there's these guys attempted to email Comcast and find out what was going on, but Comcast wrote back and said, our home security system has the same advanced industry standard technology as the nation's top home security providers, which I've got to wholeheartedly disagree with.
Right.
I've been doing security for the better part of a decade, and we in the security industry we don't use Zigbee. We're using some other form of wireless signal. And if that signal is interfered with, your system goes into a trouble condition, which you can also do all sorts of stuff off of. So it can
right.
Actually
so you
detect.
can use that as a trigger, and you can say if it goes into trouble mode, do X, Y, or Z.
Yeah. The system's smart enough to know that if all of a sudden all of the wireless contacts suddenly go out, then there's a bigger issue at hand, and it does its job, and that's been part of major security systems. I think Comcast could correct this with software. Like a software update to their
it sounds like it. It sounds like something they could.
But yeah, it's just it's a glaring oversight in their product line, and a couple of people pointed out to me on Twitter as well. Like I posted this story, and a couple of people wrote back and were curious as to why this didn't affect security systems. I was explaining, they use completely different wireless standards, but they were also saying that SmartThings uses Z-Wave. And that's in the 900 megahertz frequency range, which is also a fairly, 900 megahertz was first. That's what the old cordless phones were on. Then 2.4 came out, and then 5.8. 900 megahertz is just as easy to block and take down a Z-Wave network. And we've got a couple of articles that we can point you to if you're interested in reading the in-depth reason, or exactly how this all works and the software to do it with and everything. All that we can include in the show notes over at HomeTech.fm/shows/95. They should be there right at the top.
Yeah, definitely. Well, like I said, it seems like really something that hopefully can be corrected on the software side. And I guess the main thing that I thought when I read this story is score one more for the, the virtues of a quote unquote traditional hardwired infrastructure. It's a conversation that, we have all the time. And I think anybody working in home technology as a profession, or anybody who's an enthusiast and is kind of planning a system should always be, should always be thinking about things like that. And we really are always preaching the virtues of getting wire in the wall when you have the chance. And I think this is just one more article that speaks to the virtues of that.
Yep. The wired ones have their problems too. None of this is completely foolproof. But you definitely, with a professionally installed system, you're definitely going to get something a lot better than evidently what Comcast is providing. Unfortunately, because I drive around town and I see a lot of little Comcast signs out in front of people's homes, just like ADT. There's a lot of Comcast Xfinity Home signs out there now. And man, I don't know. Comcast better get on the ball and update this thing, because this seems kind of like a major issue for them moving forward. Yeah.
Well, anyways, let's move on. We've got another story here, actually about another very large name in home technology, the Nest thermostat, and saw a number of stories this last week kind of break about some software glitches, and it's certainly not the first time that we've heard of that. And with any connected product, obviously, these things are going to happen, but the biggest thing to me, I saw one story in the New York Times that says this Nest thermostat glitch leaves users in the cold, was kind of the headline. And, that's basically what had happened was the software glitched out and the thermostat essentially just shut off. And, if you're middle-aged, young, healthy, living in a temperate climate, whatever, that may not be that big of a deal. But, when you start thinking about people with very young children, elderly people living in very cold climates, all of a sudden your thermostat just completely loses functionality and you have no way to turn on the heat. I mean, that could be a very big deal. And so it's just surprising that there's not some sort of, I guess, redundancy built into the thermostat that even if the software glitches out, it can still kind of maintain its core functionality. I guess that was kind of something that struck me as odd when I was reading the story. And the other thing that I thought really was just, if you are in that situation, maybe a good thing to just keep an old analog, go to the hardware store, right? And have like one of the really cheap, the old school thermostats that you could just put on the wall if you have one of these issues. Now, granted, not everybody is going to feel comfortable or capable pulling that Nest off the wall and swapping it out. And so obviously that's not a cure-all, but certainly something to consider.
Yeah. I'm reading the article, and it looks like this kind of floats around how these particular thermostats may have been installed. When you install a thermostat, and particularly on like older systems, we've talked about this a number of times on the show, probably last year sometime, about you needing a C wire, which is the common wire, to get back to the thermostat. If you don't have that, the thermostat has to do what's called power stealing, and it has to steal a little bit of electricity from one of the hot wires while it's passing through and going down the other line. And that's evidently a really tricky thing to do, especially, it seems, now that it's gotten kind of cold where these Nest thermostats are going, and they're going into this power stealing mode, and basically the battery just drains down and the thermostat kicks off because there's no power to run it anymore.
Right.
So it's a software glitch, yes. I've known certain manufacturers to have kind of the same software glitch. Control4 kind of comes to mind with their first version of their thermostat. It came down to, we had to install those with a C wire and just turn off the power stealing feature because it worked just so much better.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
So this has happened before, and it's happening again, but it's happening on a much, much larger scale with the Nest thermostats than it would with the Control4 thermostats.
Yeah, and I guess again, kind of the theme is buyer beware. We buy these connected products and we get excited about them for a lot of the features and convenience that they can bring. But there's always drawbacks. It sounds to me like this is kind of an issue, Seth, that you've run across with other thermostats that may not have been, a direct comparison to the Nest, but either way, always something to consider when you're shopping for these products. And I know for me, I've got an Ecobee here at home, and it's been working beautifully, but I kept the old one. I rent right now, and I kept the old one obviously around. And that was kind of, again, the first thing I thought when I read this article is if I ever did really have that sort of issue, I could at least put the old one on. And even I believe in the article that I was reading, he mentioned just going down to the hardware store and buying like a $15 thermostat there just to kind of get the issue resolved. But always trade-offs, right? I mean, that's something we talk about a lot. And speaking of trade-offs, that kind of bumps us into our next story here, which is Samsung SmartThings. And, Seth, this kind of goes back. You and I talked about SmartThings around our holidays, one of our holiday specials when we were sort of right around Thanksgiving. And you and I were kind of looking forward to Christmas and talking about some of the things as a home technology enthusiast that you might consider, putting in someone's stocking. And I had mentioned SmartThings because I think they do a fabulous job at least marketing the product, and it looks like a very compelling platform. I don't have any direct experience. Well, right after we had talked about that, we had actually a couple of different listeners reach out to us and let us know that really polished kind of appearance that you hear about SmartThings is not consistent really with the end user experience. And thought that was interesting. I think we had alluded to that on a show afterwards. And then this week caught a blog post on streamingmediablog.com, which was a site I was not familiar with, but it came across one of my feeds or Google alerts or what have you. And, the title of the article pretty much says it all. It says Samsung SmartThings home automation platform is so unreliable, they should stop selling it. That's a pretty strong statement.
Yeah. And I was going through the article and kind of reading. It looks like he's had a lot of problems over the past year or so with this particular system. And I really do feel for this guy because, Jason, I'm pretty sure that you and I both have had problem child systems that have been installed over the years. And as custom integrators, we do like everything we can to make the technology work better for the end user. And sometimes it just comes down to, who knows, ghosts in the machine, or it's probably gremlins. Yeah. And you have these problems you just cannot get around. And it looks like this guy tried. Samsung has tried. Like they reached out and tried to help him out, and it's just not working for him. At the end of the day, it just simply doesn't turn on and off his lights correctly. It doesn't work, and that's really disheartening, I guess, to me, because I was just like you. I was pretty excited about the Samsung's platform. I was excited to see at CES that, even with the reports that we had come to us, that they would start including this into their TVs and refrigerators.
Yeah.
Just had to get that in.
Yeah, right.
I was excited about that because it brings this general awareness, but they've got to do it right. And it's really sad to kind of see SmartThings kind of going down this
black
road.
eye.
Yeah, I guess Nest is getting it. SmartThings is geting it. Apple gets it. I mean, everybody seems to get it at some point.
Well, the thing about SmartThings to me is like, ever since we mentioned it now, I've heard, from multiple different sources, unsolicited, just and otherwise, just reading and being online and doing what we do as part of the show prep and everything. And it's like where there's smoke, there's fire. And it seems like SmartThings really has some work to do. And I guess it's just proof that the smart home is hard. And I think we're a long ways away from the true DIY smart home. I think there's always going to be a place for people to, like you and me, to come in and provide some assistance to help make these things work. But every now and then, it just, like you said, it comes down to being really at the mercy of variables that may or may not be in your control. And when you start talking about something like the inability to turn lights on and off, obviously that's going to frustrate people very, very quickly. It's one thing if you can't get your music to work, or the Pandora station you want to listen to while you're having your breakfast keeps buffering or whatever, that's kind of annoying. But not being able to turn the lights on and off, the previous story we talked about, not being able to turn the heat on if it's 5 degrees outside. I mean, these are big deals. And
or 41.
Yeah. Or 41 if you live in Florida. Right. I can see you just bundled up in your blanket and sweater and sipping some hot chocolate. But
you have no idea. You have no idea how close you were on that description.
Oh, I do. I mean, I grew up in Arizona and spent a number of years out in California, so I know what it's like. You get acclimated, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
But it's unfortunate. I agree with you. I think that anytime the smart home and home technology gets black eyes like this, it's bad for the whole industry, and it really kind of casts what we do in a bad light. And it's unfortunate, but it is a reality. And these are complicated devices. We're filling our homes with little miniature computers, and you don't buy a computer and expect never to have to give it a reboot. And unfortunately, that's just part of the deal. When you start buying a lot of little mini computers and sticking them all over your house to do all these different functions, part of that is it just comes with the territory. So hopefully this gentleman can get his issues kind of straightened out. And it sounds like SmartThings is now engaged in trying to help him out, and, wish him the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess we have time for one more disappointing story.
Yes, we do.
And it looks like somebody who attended CES, covers the home automation beat, was pretty disappointed in what he saw or didn't see very much of at CES.
Yeah, this is an article on Forbes Tech from Mike Krell, and I'm not super familiar with his work, but came across the article. And it's headlined a disappointing CES for home automation. And essentially the gist of the article is that, as the title implies, he was kind of disappointed with what he saw in the smart home at CES this year. And really the point he's making has to do with the pervasiveness of kind of point solutions and not a lot of differentiation between, the plethora of like smart light bulbs, for instance, that we're seeing on the market. And really he's making the argument that manufacturers and people who are trying to get into the business of providing connected home products really need to think about the experience and the end user experience and sell the experience and manufacture products to that end. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, something really resonated with me when he said that, because this is what we do as home technology professionals. This is what we've been doing for decades, is trying to go out and take all of these different various point solutions and make them all work together in a cohesive way that's easy for the end user to operate and understand, and actually adds value to their home and not just aggravation. So I think it was an interesting article, and definitely one that's worth a read.
Yeah, and I mean, integrators will all know this, and we've probably all heard this. Like, we talk about all of these brands of home automation gear, and that's like one of the things that you don't sell a brand, you sell a lifestyle. I mean, there's convenience to some of these products if they're installed and they work correctly. And I just don't think that the DIY industry has come to either understand that or understand how well things would and could work if there was more integration between each different platform that's out there. I guess this kind of moves into like, hey, yeah, let's get another standard to bring everything together. But if you get into the Wink ecosystem, you're pretty much going to be stuck with the devices that Wink can support, along with the Eggminder. And if you get into the Nest ecosystem, well, you're going to be maybe one day supported with all these Thread devices that'll be coming on the market. And you get into Apple, it's all HomeKit. You get into Control4, it's Zigbee. I mean, it's kind of crazy that we're still at this point. I think we're going to be at this point for a lot more time. But when you're looking at all these products, the big thing to do is to step back, say, what do I want to do, and then figure out how to do it with the products that you have in front of you, and not necessarily with a certain brand. Like, don't stick to a certain brand. That's my biggest advice, because if you get all in one ecosystem, sometimes you can get burned pretty bad.
Yeah, and I think it's a kind of a two-part conversation. I mean, there are people out there, and a lot of our listeners to the show I would say fall into this category, that don't mind tinkering and making things work and experimenting and figuring out, how to make a device from manufacturer A talk to manufacturer B when maybe they weren't necessarily made to do that. That's a small fraction of the population, and the vast majority of people, when they think about home technology, or when you bring it up in a conversation or you're trying to sell them on the idea, it sounds cliched to say, but they just want a system that will add value and add convenience to their lives. And this is the point I'm always trying to make when we get into conversations about all the different standards and protocols. It's important to think about that stuff. But as somebody who is trying to work and add value in the home technology space, really the main thing I'm thinking about is not so much should the consumer be concerned with, am I using Zigbee or Z-Wave? Am I using Thread or HomeKit? Or, what am I using to make it happen? It's just, how can I sell them an integrated solution, that works to the best extent possible, the most reliable system that I can design and sell them, and B, one that I can support reliably, because things are always going to hiccup. Doesn't matter what solution you buy, things are always going to hiccup. There's always going to be glitches. It's just the nature of the beast. And so, he talks specifically about the company Vivint. Now, granted, Vivint is a very large company and very different in a lot of ways from the companies that you and I work in. But his point, I think, still stands, is that they're a vertically integrated company, meaning they sell the solution, they install it, and they support it. And that's exactly what we do, right, Seth? And so that's, to me, what really struck me about this article, was just thinking about this idea of, and he even uses the term home automation as a service. Julie over at CE Pro has a term that she's kind of coined that I really like, which is smart home as a service. So same kind of deal. And I think we really have to think about that as a consumer and as a home technology professional. What am I really selling? Is it the boxes or is it the service and the experience? And I think it's clearly the latter.
Yeah, definitely. Good points. All good points. I completely agree.
So anyways, a great article, and I think one that's really worth a read. I think our listeners will enjoy. So we'll include a link to that in the show notes again at HomeTech.fm/95 is where you can get to that. And Seth, I think that kind of wraps up the negative news for this week. Let's move into something. Let's move into one or two things a little more positive, eh?
Let's make them smile.
Yeah. A small bit of good news, and this has actually already come and gone, and so the event has passed, and it was only really applicable if you live in the UK, which I think a fair amount of our listeners do, and in Canada, and that was the first ever live NBA broadcast in 4K. And so 4K, content is something we talk about a lot. 4K TVs are obviously the big deal now, but really the conversation always comes back to where's the content? And one of the most challenging things that we can point to is live sport broadcasts. There's a lot of technology that has to go into making that happen. And we think that really when we start seeing more of that is when we're actually getting close to broadcast 4K content becoming more prevalent. And so actually January 14th, so about a week ago as we sit here and record this, there was an NBA game over in London, and it was broadcast on BT Sport in the UK and Rogers Communications, I guess, in Canada. And that's pretty cool. I think it's great that the NBA is doing this. I would be really curious to know exactly how many people watched or were able to tune into that. But either way, I think it's promising, and it bodes well for the future of 4K.
Yeah, and it looks like this is only available to customers who are subscribed to two particular channels, one in the UK and one on Rogers in Canada.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I was like, I'm thinking about how are they doing this? They're obviously using some kind of whatever these decoder boxes are able to support 4K. You have a 4K TV, everything lines up correctly, and it should work fine. So that's exciting. Yeah,
it is. But yeah, I think like you were getting at, I think the point you're making there is probably a pretty small target. Once you weed down, okay, you've got the UK and Canada, then you've got these two providers, these two channels, and then of that pool of people that are subscribed to those two channels, they've got to have all the hardware in line, the right set-top box, and the right TV to display it. So I'd have to imagine it was a fairly relatively limited number of people that were able to watch it. But again, it's exciting to see this start.
Yeah, and it's not like if you want to mess up, do it epically, like do it in front of a small audience rather than like the Super Bowl is going to be in 4K this year. Everybody run out and get a 4K TV and then
fair point.
And fall flat on your face.
Yeah, fair point.
Well, and we have a funny little diagram from a friend of the show, Chris Bender over in the UK.
You're going to do it, huh? You couldn't resist one more piece of bad news.
Well, this isn't bad news.
I guess that depends on how you look at it.
Chris is just trying to help us out, man.
I couldn't tell if he was trying to help me or just make my head explode.
Well, he made up a nice little diagram of how you can determine what Blu-ray format is going to play on your new 4K TV. And he starts on the left-hand side with the evidently 4 versions of Blu-ray discs that will be available to consumers in the upcoming years. One is UHD HDR, one is HD HDR, UHD, and HD. So all of those discs will be kind of laying around, right? And I guess they'll be designated somehow as to what particular type they are. I have no idea. The new Blu-ray players are only going to play the first 3, and I'm not going to try and redo those. Just go look at the diagram.
Yeah.
The regular Blu-ray discs will actually play in the new Blu-ray player, which, and I'm sure DVDs will play and CDs too. My customers always ask me about that. But current Blu-ray players, like if you have a Blu-ray player that you bought last week, it will not play these new formats. It simply won't play those new ultra high definition discs,
which makes sense. That part definitely makes sense.
Yeah, because you're probably going to end up paying a little bit more for that, and more for the Blu-ray player that plays 4K, and of course more for the TV that plays 4K content. So all of the everything is aligned, and you cross your fingers, turn around, dance twice, look through a mirror, through a reflection in a fish tank. I suppose, all of this, this makes sense. But man, what a pile of spaghetti this turns out to be.
Yeah. On the input side, it's fairly straightforward, but then he's got all the different TVs on the right, with UHD and UHD HDR and then HD TV. And he's kind of got lines connecting the different Blu-ray players and trying to show you, what will work and what won't. And that's about the best that I can do explaining it. You'll have to go check out the link to that at our show notes and take a look at it. I think it's pretty funny. I think you're probably right. He was trying to provide a resource that would actually help, but it just is so. I mean, it's very hard to decipher, and I think it, if anything, to me, speaks to the demise of physical media, which I think is happening. And I think, the new UHD Blu-ray players are kind of the last gasp. I think physical media it'll hang on for a while, and I think maybe to an extent always, because there are people who, similar to having like a collection of books or vinyl, really enjoy having like physical copies of movies and having them on display, which I get. It's not my thing, but I understand that. I just think that the idea of physically buying a copy and buying a disc as opposed to streaming it, is going away. I don't think I'm going out on a limb by saying that.
Nope. Just go check this out and make it clear as mud.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think that's going to wrap up our show. But before we go, I have something special.
Oh, do you?
Yes, I do. Jason, I've invented something.
I can't wait to hear about this.
In our show notes, just so everybody knows, I wrote something special.
Something special. That's all I've got to go on here.
So I've invented something, Jason. I think this is going to change the world, and
I don't doubt it.
I've got it right here. It's in a project box of mine. It's in many, many pieces, but I'm going to be putting those pieces together, putting it in a box, and sending it to you.
Oh,
you are going to be user number 1 of my new invention.
Well, that's interesting. Now is must be the surprise, Seth, that you've been kind of telling me about off air for probably going on a year now.
It's probably going on a year because I thought of it.
This is a big deal. I'm on pins and needles here.
For a year you've been thinking about this. I thought of it more than a year ago, and started trying in my free time, trying to piece together how to do this the best way I could. About the time your daughter was born, and I think you're going to love this. It's a piece of baby tech, but I think it's going to change the world.
Well, I can't wait. And now the good thing now, Seth, is that you're actually on air talking about it. So now you have no choice but to follow through, because you've been teasing me about this for like 14 months.
Exactly. # what's in the box.
Well, that could go a lot of ways.
Right. Oh yeah. It's definitely not what you think it is. But it will be a lot of fun. I think we'll have to do when you get this thing, don't unbox it. We'll have to do the unboxing on air.
An on-air unboxing. Okay, I like it.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And we'll get it set up and this will be fun. So
can't wait. I'll be on the lookout for it.
History's in the making.
All right. Well, I think that just about does it for our show. I think I've had about as much bad news as I can handle for one night. So I'm going to step away from the mic and go try to find something positive to read. Yeah,
absolutely. This has been a downer of a show, other than the most amazing invention I think mankind has seen.
Yeah, well, you got to end on a bright note, right?
Yeah. I think this is going to change the world, and I can't wait for you to get this and actually use it.
Awesome. Well, speaking of ending on a bright note, we do want to mention that the Home Tech Podcast is a proud member of the Technology.fm family of podcasts. Listeners to our show will be familiar with that, but if you're a new listener and you haven't heard of it, go check it out. It's a website that's kind of a curated collection of technology podcasts, including the Smart Home Show by Mike Wolf and Home On by a good friend of the show, Richard Gunther. So we would encourage you to go check that out. Also wanted to just send a quick reminder to those of you still listening. We appreciate your listenership, and want to let you know that we're this year, one of our projects that we're undertaking is kind of ramping up our email list. And that's something that we've had for a while, and I've been sending out kind of weekly show reminders to anyone who subscribes to that. But what we're going to do this year to kind of ramp that up is I'm going to be doing, try to be doing weekly, but maybe bi-weekly special emails that go out just to that list, where I'm going to be sharing some thoughts on one or two stories that are going on in home technology that week. And that's going to be exclusive content, kind of an exclusive newsletter type of thing that'll only be going out to our email list. So you won't find any of that on the website or anything like that. And we'd encourage you to go sign up. We'd love to have you. And you can do that very easily at HomeTech.fm, and then just look in the right-hand column, and there's the sign-up form right there.
Absolutely. And we won't spam you. We won't sell you off to somebody for spam. We're totally legit. Other than my inventions, I think that we're on the up and up.
Yeah, you got it.
All right, Jason. Well, I think that wraps up this week. Let's get back together and sit down and talk next week.
All right, sounds good, Seth. We'll talk soon. Take care.